everyone. Happy to be on today to chat with you about a question I actually got from one of my Blogger to Author community members. If you want to join us there and get your questions answered, you can do so at blogger2author.com/community. It's a free Facebook group. But this community member was asking me how she should go about working with influencers and specifically how she should ask them to review her book and to feature her book either on their blogs or social media channels, that sort of thing. But before I get into that, I'll introduce myself. Hi, I'm Dr. Beth Brombos of Blogger to Author. I'm a #1 best-selling author, and I help bloggers and other content creators get their books out into the world. I help them make a big impact on what they do, help them build authority and credibility, and just help them build their blogs and businesses with a book. So the person who asked this question, she just published a book and she is DIYing her publicity for her book and DIYing her launch, which I know a lot of you watching will be doing as well. So I just wanted to give some real great tips for how to go about doing this. Before you even approach influencers, what I think you should do is really sit down and think about what you need them to do and what you're going to give them in return. And I think almost everyone, if not everybody watching this, knows what it's like to be an influencer. You create content, and if you don't do sponsored posts yourself, you probably have friends who do sponsored posts. And so I think it's important to keep in mind that this is a way of making a living for a lot of people. And so if you have a budget to pay them for a review, that's great. But I don't think you necessarily need to have a budget, especially if you already have some sort of a relationship with them, if they kind of know you, at least in name. If you have common friends, that will really help. And then also if they just know that, you're just kind of getting started off too, and you're not making millions of dollars. And so you may not necessarily have a budget, but I think a lot of them are happy to help out friends. And especially if you have something that you could do in turn to help them get some exposure, for example, I'm sure that would go a long way. So again, before you even approach somebody, I want you to think about what they're going to get in return, because a lot of, or just about anybody I know, when they are approached with a business proposition, they think about what's in it for them. What are they going to get out of it? So I think that you should take the time first to think that through ahead of time, so that if they ask that question, you're prepared to answer it. So that's one thing you should do. The next step would be to come up with a list of people you want to contact. And to start out with, you may want to put at the top of your list people who you already have a relationship with, because it's way less scary to get started out asking, for example, your friends to share something, or somebody who's a good acquaintance. That's a great place to start. If you need to move beyond that circle, for example, if you've already asked all of your friends to share about your book, great things to do would be to ask for introductions for people whose audience would be a great fit for your book, or whose audience would be really interested in your book. Or just think about in general, if you can introduce yourself and to somebody who would really benefit from your book, I think that could be helpful too. But having that connection, and especially if you have somebody who could facilitate that connection, that goes a long way in getting somebody to say yes. So once you know who you want to contact, then it's time to sit down and write out your pitch. And I know this is super scary and uncomfortable, but it's doable. And my recommendation would be to include 4 things, and include them in a certain order, which I'm going to look at my notes for just to make sure I don't miss anything. So the first thing you should do is do a little intro. not necessarily focused on you. You might mention briefly who you are, but in your intro, you need to show them that you know who they are. If these are your close blogging friends or your close business friends, they know who you are. You may not need to do that, but especially if this is a colder pitch, especially you should never send out a form letter. The part that is about you and what you do, you could reuse, but you always want to personalize it and make sure that the person can tell that you've done your homework, you know what they do, and that you are genuinely, ideally, a fan of what they do. And so you should be able to speak to that, and I recommend putting that in the first paragraph of your pitch. The second thing I want you to do is write out your ask. And in this case, it's going to be, whether you want them to write a review for your book, maybe even if you want them to have that book or have the review in the book. You could ask them to share on social media. You could have them do both. But include that and try to make it as minimally onerous as possible. So trying to think ahead of what would make them say no and try and make it easier for them. For example, you could write out some sample social media posts. So even if they want to take their own photo, they could at least have an idea of what they could write in a post. Although you don't necessarily need to include that, but offer it as part of your ask. Say, hey, if you're willing to do this, I'm happy to supply you with some samples of text that you could use for your social media post that you could then alter a little bit or put in your own voice, but just so that it saves you some time. So again, write out your ask, but write it in a way that makes it seem really easy for them. Essentially what you want to do is make it easier for them to say yes. The third thing I want you to do, and I want you to spend some time thinking about this, is include a piece about why their audience will benefit from your book. Because those of us who have spent time building our audiences, we really care about our audiences. So in any case, if this is somebody you've heard about, and if they have followers, it's because they've earned trust with their followers. And because their followers know that that person, the influencer, is always looking out for the followers' best interests. And so just a cold pitch like, hey, this is my thing. This is what I want you to do. For example, if somebody emails me that, but they can't tell me why, if they came on my podcast, that would be helping my audience. So what, Olive, you are going to get out of that, I'm going to politely decline, because really, I don't want to just be creating content for the sake of creating content. I want to make sure that I'm helping out my audience and being of service. And other influencers are going to be that way too. So in that email, again, that third paragraph, what I want you to do, or, even if it's a short paragraph, it doesn't have to be forever, but just tell them why their audience is going to benefit. And then as an added bonus, that's going to show them that you know their audience. And that is a huge plus as well. And then I would recommend that you round out that email or correspondence, however you want to do it, with just a simple call to action. So make it super clear and super simple. So it could be like, hey, if you're in, respond to this email with a simple yes, and I'll get you more information, that sort of thing. But don't give them a huge laundry list of things to do, because then it's going to make it harder to get the yes, because they're like, well, maybe I do it, but if I have to do A, B, and C and, deep clean my house before I can get involved, then no thanks. But if all they need to do is reply with a one word or a one sentence email, that's going to make it a lot easier on them, and that's going to really increase your chances of getting them to say yes. So, to recap again, take some time figuring out what you're going to offer them. Is that a free copy of your book? Is it a free copy of your book and a feature on your social media so you can help get them some new eyes? That sort of thing. So just so you're prepared for that. So if they come back and ask about that, you can address that. Also, you could do like a 1-sentence summary of that in your email. So say, hey, I'd love to send you a free copy, a free print copy of my book, or a free ebook copy, kind of depending on how you want to do it, what your budget is, that sort of thing. So once you've got all of that figured out, what I want you to do is come up with your list of people you're going to contact. Again, I would start out by contacting people who you know well, who are very familiar with you, who you feel comfortable contacting or a little more comfortable contacting. I know it's really uncomfortable for a lot of us to do that asking, but it's super, super important. And then you can kind of expand out from there. Ask your friends if they know of anybody who would be a great fit, that sort of thing, and just build that circle out. If you do it this way as well, one thing you can do in the email and say, hey, so-and-so has agreed to feature the book. And so you can use other people who have said yes and who have posted as social proof as you work with bigger and bigger influencers and get the word out about your book that way. And then it's time to write your email, which again, I recommend starting with an intro to briefly introduce yourself and then make it personalized so they know that it's not a canned email and that you actually know who they are. I get these pitches all the time, even for my fitness blog, where it's like, oh, hey, I see you write about running and yoga. And I'm like, yeah, you just went to my website and you looked at my menu at the top of my page and then just like took those words and wrote them down. Like you don't know anything about what I really do. So I do want you to dig in, especially if they are somebody who doesn't know you, because they are going to say no if you don't personalize it, or they're going to be much more likely to say no. So that's your first paragraph again. Second paragraph, the next thing you're going to do is ask them to do whatever it is, to share a picture of your book, to post a review of the book, whatever that is. And in that paragraph, you may want to include sort of what they're going to get in return for doing that. If you have anything, whether it's a free copy of the book, physical, digital, that sort of thing. Again, the next thing you'll talk about is why their audience is going to benefit from your book. So what are they going to get out of it? And then the fourth thing is, again, that really super simple call to action that makes it almost brainless for them to reply and say, yes, I'm in. I would love to help. So I hope this was helpful, and for those of you who are DIYing your book publicity, I hope that this makes the idea of approaching influencers a little less scary. Hopefully you can get some more eyes on your book that way. As always, if you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments. Feel free to join us at the free Blogger to Author community, which is at bloggertoauthor.com/community. And if you need some hand-holding and extra one-on-one help getting your book out into the world, you can sign up for one of my one-on-one book marketing strategy sessions. You can find more information about those at bloggertoauthor.com/services. So have a great day, and until next time, happy writing.